Hi everybody, it's Chris Candela here and welcome to FAQ Faith and Quarantine. We're looking at the Bible to see how it helps us to live well in this particular cultural moment, and what a moment we are living in. Massive spike in the number of coronaviruses around the world. I think the World Health Organization is saying it's 8.9 million people have been infected. On top of that, many nations are deciding to relax their quarantining. So in the UK, we're talking about whether we would reduce the distance. It used to be 2 meters. Are we going to go down to 1 meter? Pubs are talking about reopening. In America, Donald Trump had a rally trying to get thousands upon thousands of people there, despite all the fears about spreading the virus. And Germany's R rate is on the increase. What is going on? How do you live well in this moment? How does the Bible give us hope? Many people saying that if the schools don't go back soon, children are going to lose hope. People are worried about the ongoing mental health implications of this extended lockdown. People wanting to get married who can't get married. How do we live now? But even more importantly, how do we live in a way now that's going to help us to build back stronger beyond? Many people talking about this being a reset moment. How can we rebuild our society, rebuild trust in things like government after the fiasco that surrounded Dominic Cummings? How do we rebuild trust in technology after there was another fiasco about how we use these track and trace apps that now we don't have one at all in the UK because the government said its plan was going to be better than Google's and Apple's, and now we're back to the drawing board. How do we rebuild trust in the church? Critical comments in The Spectator saying the church has gone to sleep in this moment. Doesn't seem to be my experience. That church seems to be busier than ever. How do we live well? Well, the book of Nehemiah can help. Before Jesus came into the world, set hundreds of years before and after the events of Esther, where we saw Esther rescue her nation from genocide, and now the city wall of Jerusalem has been burnt down and the gates have been destroyed. And so there's a sense of disgrace that the kind of heart of God's people have been ripped out from them. Even though many people are living dispersed lives far away from their ancestral homes, and Nehemiah has gone on a search and repair mission. He's been sent back to do some good. And we pick up the story, Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 11. I went to Jerusalem, and after staying there 3 days, I set out during the night with a few men. I had not told anyone what my God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. There were no mounts with me except the one I was riding on. So Nehemiah sets out after 3 days. It's been a crazy long journey. He needed time to recover. Maybe he needed time to get his head together. He had to kind of make up a contextual plan. Here he was, he'd been hundreds, maybe thousands of miles away in the city of Susa. And it's one thing to have a big idea before you're actually on location. He spends 3 days there getting his head together, and then he goes on a recce. And this mission is so dangerous, he has to go at night time because there are enemies surrounding the city of Jerusalem. And so a night inspection was probably going to be the best he could do. Going outside of the city wall, bit dangerous, but hard to see. So he carefully goes round on his horse to find out what has happened. Verse 13, by night I went out through the valley gate towards the jackal well and the dung gate, examining the walls of Jerusalem, which had been broken down, and its gates, which had been destroyed by fire. Then I moved on towards the fountain gate and the king's pool, and there was not enough room for my mount to get through. So I went up the valley by night, examining the wall. Finally, I turned back and re-entered through the valley gate. The officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, because as yet I had said nothing to the Jews, or the priests, or nobles, or officials, or any others who would be doing the work. Okay, so timing seems to be everything for Nehemiah. He'd been sent by King Artaxerxes to go and restore the walls of the city. He hadn't just gone in there and spoken his mind. He'd gone into the presence of Artaxerxes looking sad, and then Artaxerxes had asked Nehemiah to speak. So timing, planning how and when you do things. Very careful, very savvy, very wise, not rushing in, very patient and deliberate. And now Nehemiah's been telling us he hasn't told anyone what he's planning to do. He wanted to see it for himself first. He didn't want to lob orders from far away. He wanted to get his hands dirty. He wanted to see what's going on. And he's gone around the city wall and you get all sorts of details about which gate he visited, helping you know this is a historical event. This really took place. And now Nehemiah is ready to reveal the plan. Then I said to them, you see the trouble we are in. Interesting. Beginning. You see the trouble we are in. So Nehemiah identifies with the group of people he's speaking to. There's a lot of leadership wisdom in the way that Nehemiah conducts himself. I don't think that's the only reason this book exists. It's part of the big picture of what God is doing in the universe. But I think the fact that you get this level of detail, that you get almost like a diary of what Nehemiah was doing, is important for us, because it's supposed to help us get into his brain and know what he was thinking, what he was planning. You see the trouble we are in. He could have said you were in. I'm not from here. I've got an important job elsewhere. You know, I'm from Susa. I'm the cupbearer to the king. I've got an important role. But no, Nehemiah identifies with the group of people he's seeking to lead. We are in trouble. Do you see it? You know, it's obvious to you, isn't it? Well, actually, if it was so obvious to everyone, why hadn't they done anything about it? There's something about Nehemiah being an outsider. Sometimes an outsider can be really helpful because they come with fresh eyes to a situation to kind of see things differently. In fact, that's often how leadership is defined. Leadership is the art of seeing things that other people can't. I think Jonathan Swift came up with that quote. So Nehemiah can see the trouble, maybe in a way that other people can't. He can spot a problem, but I think he's also visionary in that he can see a solution. Did you see that? You see the trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem and we will no longer be in disgrace. See the trouble we're in. The city is in ruins. Come. Let us, I'm going to do this with you. We are going to rebuild this city. Now, again, if this was obvious, people would have started it already. But Nehemiah's coming in, fresh eyes, fresh vision. Come, let's do this together. We're going to work together. We're going to cooperate in order to see this city restored. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem and we will no longer be in disgrace. What does he mean, disgrace? Some people would talk about shame-based cultures, that, you know, there's a lot of face to be lost if your city is open to marauders. You know, there's no gate, the walls are down. Jerusalem is an accident or a disaster waiting to happen. Anyone can just come in and go. They're not taking the people of Israel seriously because the city is in such disrepair. Maybe you've turned up somewhere. We turned up in Paris in the summer and we're really looking forward to it, but the whole city was a mess. There was litter everywhere. There was works going on. The kind of beautiful romantic picture of Paris was not up to scratch, and so the city was a bit of a disgrace. Even worse, you know, if there's an Olympic Games going on, people often take pride in the kind of national image that's going to be portrayed, and so they want to make sure everything is right and in order. But for the people of Israel, it was even more significant than just national pride. They were saying, we are supposed to be God's chosen people, and look, we're not even looking after the city. There's great disgrace here. And again, Nehemiah says, we are in disgrace. I feel implicated in this, even though he had nothing to do with the fall. He was born after all the events that led to the exile of the Jews from their promised land. And as soon as he knew something was wrong, Nehemiah has got involved, but he's still identifying, seeing it as a common problem, drawing alongside the disgrace and dishonour that is on the city, taking that as his own burden and therefore motivating himself and others to do something about it. I also told them about the gracious hand of my God upon me and what the king had said to me. So he's outlined the problem. He's shown them what they need to do together. He's seen the outcome of what happens if they fix this thing. And now he says, here are the resources. God is with us. Here's the story. You know, I didn't know if I could go in the presence of the king, but God was with me and the king gave me favour. And not only that, I've got all these letters. Remember, I've got all this promise of safe passage, but also for timber to be provided. Look what I've got. And that's such an encouragement. He does all those four things so well, isn't it? Spot the problem that we are in, recognise the challenge ahead. Come, let us build this thing. Recognize the outcome of what happens if we fix this thing. We'll be not in disgrace anymore, and then tell people about the resources. He's so wise in his presentation. And so how will the people respond? They might be resistant to this. Who is this guy? He doesn't even speak like us. He's got a funny foreign accent because he's from Susa. Comes in here telling us what to do. Let's see what the response will be. They replied, "Let us start rebuilding." So they began this good work. He's caught their imagination. He's shown them what can be done and how it can be done. And he's offered to do it with them. There's something powerful about Nehemiah, this role model figure for leadership here. And look, this was a unique moment in Israel's history. They have to rebuild a wall so that Jerusalem can be habitable again. And then we can talk about what the restoration of Israel would look like. Do you remember in the book of Isaiah, the promise was that the trees will clap their hands and the valleys will be made level. That's what's going to happen when the people of God return from exile. But it didn't feel like that. The people of God could have returned from exile any time, but they hadn't, because Jerusalem was in such disrepair. Maybe it was just there was nothing to go back for. But also maybe a gap in expectation. God had said like everything would be better, but actually everything looks lots worse. And Nehemiah's feeling like, you know what, we've got to do something here. God's promises are sometimes fulfilled by the people of God stepping up and doing what we're supposed to do. And so this work begins. And they began this good work of rebuilding. But when Sanballat and the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard about it, they mocked and ridiculed us. "What is this you are doing?" they asked. "Are you rebelling against the king?" I answered them by saying, "The God of heaven will give us success. We, his servants, will start rebuilding. But as for you, you have no share in Jerusalem or any claim or historic right to it." So in the midst of this visionary speech, this calling to action, there is opposition. This is opposition from outside of the wall, outside of the city. These are the leaders, some of the surrounding nations and armies, and they're mocking them. They want to stop this work as quickly as they can. They want to sow dissent and despair into the ranks of Israel. But Nehemiah stands strong. You know, the God of heaven will give us success. What incredible confidence he has that as they set their face to the task of doing the right thing, God will respond. So, as I said, this is a unique moment in salvation history. This is part of the journey of the restoration of Israel, of people returning from the far corners of the world where they've been scattered by persecution and war and terror. And now they're coming back if Nehemiah can build the city back up again. And that's going to pave the way for the Jews to be back in Jerusalem, for Jesus to come. All of those important moments in salvation history kind of hinge on this rebuilding of the city walls. Now, I can't tell you that our moment that we're living in is as significant in the grand story of God, but it is our moment nonetheless. And so I think as we think about our future, as we think about how we rebuild our lives, our society, our confidence, our trust, our vision as churches and nations, there's stuff that we can learn here. And I think sometimes it's overblown. There's too much emphasis on singular leaders. It does feel, though, that Nehemiah was a catalytic leader. He leads in such a way. He brings the best out of other people. And friends, I think that's what we've got to do wherever we have opportunity and influence, to try and lead in this kind of humble, gracious, catalytic way that brings the best out of people. I know I've failed at that many times in my life, but as I read this book, I'm kind of re-envisioned to think, in this moment, as I have opportunity, what could I do to maybe follow in those kind of 4 footsteps that I see from Nehemiah? Spot the problem and identify with it. You know, right now we have a problem with trust and confidence as a society. We don't know how to live. We need this reset moment, both personally and nationally. And I'm in that. I get that. I need to reset my life because of what I'm seeing that coronavirus has given me opportunity to kind of spend more time away from the hustle and bustle of my normal life and give me a new opportunity to kind of refocus on family and think about priorities and stuff. So that's good. The second thing is to realise what needs to be done. There are so many seemingly intractable problems that need to be fixed. Which one is our one? Which one is it that God has called us as individuals or as a collective of churches to kind of impact on? Is it the environment? Is it racial disharmony? Is it the fractures in our care system and the fractures in our society? Which are the things that God's calling us to make an impact on? Is it calling the nation back to faith? It could be all of those things. But which is your piece of the puzzle? Then we can say, come, let's do it. And then what are the resources that God has given us? That's what Nehemiah seems to be really clear on. Look, this is what God has blessed me with. This is what God has opened up. Let's walk together into the future and knowing that God is with us, that God of heaven will give us success. Friends, as you spend a bit of time reflecting on this passage with me, I wonder what ideas God is sowing into your heart and mind. What are the issues? What are the leadership moments in your family, in your business, in your neighbourhood that need fixing? How can you draw on the wisdom of this ancient book to give us wisdom for moving forward and rebuilding better than it was before? That's the ongoing story. That's the ongoing challenge as we look through Nehemiah. Join me again tomorrow when we pick up the next chapter of Nehemiah in FAQ. Thanks for joining me.